My name is Janio. I'm from Santa Ana College, and I'm here to talk about three concepts: the student learning outcomes as they relate to student program learning outcomes. I think that's the phrase that you use here at West LA. It's program student learning outcomes, right? You call them SLOs. Normally they're program, but really doesn't matter. It's pretty much the same thing. I am going to touch about on the idea of portfolio assessment and how to make the electronic portfolios work for you. And we are going to be speaking quite a bit about service area outcomes, which is yet another venue that it's just worth exploring. There's really a lot of very interesting things that are happening there. Besides the academic part where we assess students in the classrooms or programs, we do have support services, and we'll talk about those. So there it is. The good news is here that paradigm is shifting. So we've experienced that. We've been experiencing this for quite some time now, and the sort of like the growing pains and learning curves and all those things that we have to jump over before we internalize the concept of student learning outcomes and then program learning outcomes, connecting those to institutional learning outcomes. All those things are really amount to quite a bit of effort. And the questions that I get for the most part is, what's at the end? Where is this? What's at the end of the rainbow, right? Kind of a thing. And as I just talked to Luis a few minutes ago, really the student learning outcomes and program learning outcomes and paying attention to the data and making the data actionable, really making a difference in the program that's based on assessment data rather than somebody's opinion is what we are after. The problem with that is that this is an effort that's really it's not only that it's difficult to collect the data and make sense out of it. It's the part that calls for some kind of an action is really what's at stake. And I think in the long run, that effort is going to pay off. It's just that that in itself calls for a major cultural and really philosophical change about what it is that's happening in education. We've all gone to schools, and grading has always been the name of the game, and the higher the GPA, the better you were. And all of a sudden, as faculty, as administrators, as really educational leaders, we are asked to pay attention to something that is quite different. Not the GPA as a result of what it is that happens in the classroom, but what it is that the data tells us about the actual abilities, the skills that students take away from the classrooms. So the way I structured today's presentation is more of a, and I think that just kind of like emerged from my discussions between Luis and Mary Jo as we were getting ready for this event, as really questions that you're certainly welcome to attempt to answer, and I will lead the discussion rather than just me speaking to you, for the next 3.5 hours. We already know what SLOs are. Yes, sorry.
Turn the light on.
Oh, that's actually not a bad idea. Thank you very much.
Oh, now you got it.
Take it out. Better?
No one can fall asleep, okay?
I was afraid.
So the first question that I have, what are SLOs? SLOs stand for Student Learning Outcomes, right? And when I was here last time, we passed around the Academic Senate publications. One is the Guiding Principles for SLO Assessment, and the other was the Glossary of Student Learning Outcomes. And you could look those things online. You can look them up and just download them and read to your heart's content. Those publications are dated 2010, I believe, which is, so they become fairly quickly dated, but I know that Academic Senate is already, State Academic Senate that is already working on developing updates for those documents. So student learning outcomes are really those overarching concepts, ideas that students need to be taking away from your courses. And the question that I have for you is, how is that different, or paying attention to those student learning outcomes, SLOs as we call them, how is it different from grading? Because that's the question that I get from faculty all the time. Hey, I grew up in this system, my GPA was high, I became successful, why can't we use that as a measure of student success? Be done with it. Be done with it. What's the difference? What's the urgency behind exploring student learning outcomes? Any ideas?
I think the more I've thought about that question the past few years, one of the things that sticks out to me when I reflect back on my experience as a student is, I wish I would have learned more of these real life skill sets in the classroom that would help me in this world as a worker now.
Right.
And I remember at that time when I was in school, the outcomes weren't really a big thing. But now with SLOs, I think we have very specific, like you said, overarching goals, and most of them are skills that will lead into the workforce.
That's right.
So, like in writing, for example, we want to make sure that a student is able to write a 5-paragraph essay. That's definitely going to translate into a real scenario in the workforce, and it's those type of things that I think is a big difference maker from a grade, which encompasses so many different things, versus a very specific outcome.
Skill. That's exactly. That's exactly right. Apparently, what's happening in the world out there, you know, we may not know this because we get our 25, 30, however many students per course per semester, and we educate them, we teach them to the best extent that we can. But you know what happens with those students is after they have completed your class, they go somewhere else. They really do. They either go to the next course, or they go to another, maybe perhaps to another higher education institution. But at the end, they will end up, for the most part, in workplace, which means that whatever you teach them in your class is going to have some kind of a reflection on what it is that they do once they find their first job. And this is what's happening, that employers are coming back telling us that, you know what, great, the computer programmers that you produce are really top-notch. One problem. They don't necessarily always know how to write an office manual. They really don't know how to present, how to coordinate the work of a small team. They really don't always know what it means to be creative, how to troubleshoot in a context of an institution, which means that we produce really people who are very focused, very well coordinated when it comes to their field of study that you envision for them. But when it comes to the stepping out of their boundaries, they really can't do it. And as you know, the world is changing around us very, 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 very quickly. So unless we address those soft skills or ideas that students really need to take out there to workforce, above and beyond what it is that's happening in your classroom, becomes very, very, very important. So I hope I'm going to forward that message throughout the presentation today. Yes?
Well, I think students today are very tech savvy, but they're not very learning savvy. So to me, the difference with the grades and the GPA is that we're talking about the skill set that students learn differently. So we've got visual learners, we have auditory learners, we have repetitive learners, we have writing learners. And the way they work and do that in the classroom, I think, is what they take into the, out into the workforce.
Absolutely.
And that's how it translates. So I think we need to look at that skill set and see, so when we're teaching, I think we all agree that there is not one methodology that works in your classroom to teach 40 plus students.
That's right.
So you have to find a way, a key to tap into that. And I think you know, you need to, as an instructor, critically look at those SLOs
Right.
to see the real effect that you can have to bring about the result that you want as, you know, as a result of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very, very, very important comment. Thank you very much. When it comes to GPA, we know that GPA truly is a good, very good predictor of student success, no question. The higher the GPA, the more likely the student is to be successful later at school and later in life. No question about it. The problem is that grade of B+, let's just say, from any given course, really doesn't tell you much about what it is that the student has actually learned in the course. We know, you know, we all have our own, you know, guidelines, regulations. Remember, Billy, March 15th, you were supposed to bring a paper by 5 p.m., you know, and I'm sorry, you were 10 minutes late, and there's 10% of your grade out the window. That was the rule I set up in January, and, you know, that's just what needs to happen. So, again, little Billy or Johnny is just fine with the B+. But again, that doesn't really tell you to what extent, let's just say, theoretical and practical outcomes for the course have been acquired by that student. A good question that I bring from Santa Ana College is that of an American Sign Language. There is American Sign Language course, 101, let's say, and there are two distinct SLOs in that course. One has to do with how well the student acquires ability to communicate using sign language itself versus the understanding and perceptions about the culture of deafness. You can imagine that these are distinct, two completely different and really, in reality, unrelated outcomes and skills that students need to acquire as a result of the course. So the question again is, what does the grade of B+ tell you, or tell me, anybody else for that matter? To what extent the student has acquired one over the other? Let's just say that the student is a master in using sign language. The SLO assessment would indicate 90% success rate on any given assessment. When it comes to theory, the culture of deafness, it's only 35%. That's just for that one student. Imagine if you could have this information for the whole course. What if you had that information for the whole program? Theory versus practice. Yes?
I'm thinking about what you said in the beginning, that the employer comes back and tells you, we as people, just as people out in the world, sometimes we go to physicians and then we go, whoa, and you go to a different physician because you don't get the two pieces together. One may be a great diagnostician, another may have more of a bedside manner with that.
That's right. Absolutely. But that's a perfect example. If you don't mind, I'll probably use it later. The physicians is a good example. That's why we always look for the second opinion. And I tell you, when it comes to even, you know, my car repair or, you know, house maintenance, I usually go with a guy who communicates with me well. I really cannot relate to people who may be experts in their field, but they cannot tell me what it is that they are going to do. And I think that may be very well true for many of us when we think of our own life experiences, right? You go to the post office, you go to the bank, you really want to talk to a person who is nice to you, who is going to make you believe that your needs are going to be met, whatever it happens to be. So again, regardless of what it is that students know in their own field, in their own specialty, in their own major, they still need to be able to convey that message to others. And I think at some point, hopefully this statement is going to resonate with what it is that West LA College has its own mission statement, out of all things. And we'll get to it in just a minute. You had a question, I'm sorry.
I guess I was trying to see if I understood this correctly.
Sure.
The difference between the assessment and the grading.
Right.
So the grading, using the analogy, I guess, of a flower. the grading would sort of look at the flower the plant has produced, right? And
Yes.
how it sort of looks in the entire garden, the workplace. But the SLO assessments
Yeah.
looks at the conditions, let's say, in the soil that would bring about the flower, and that would take in place, that would take in consideration, like you say, the feedback from the employers saying, yes, they can do this, but we need more of this and that, or the expertise of the individual in that, teaching that subject.
Yeah, you could, that's a good analogy. I do, and perhaps that's going to let me address the issue of direct and indirect assessment. What's the difference? What's the difference between direct and indirect? See, the direct assessment is what it is that I see you can actually do. Indirect are our standardized tests. Indirect assessment tells you very indirectly what it is that student can do. And I found, again, I'm not going to pick on any one department. I'm not going to say which one it is. But let's just say I've seen examples of departments who say, well, we have this 63 question standardized test at the end of every semester we are giving to all students in this course. 63 questions, and we have 3 SLOs. And this assessment measures those SLOs, absolutely. It does. Yes, we have everything there, everything's there. All right? How do you know this? Well, let me show you, or let us show you. And they go through this exercise of aligning 63 questions to the 3 distinct SLOs. And you know what happened at the end of the exercise after we were done with this? We found 7 questions that didn't relate to any of the SLOs at all. So the question was, why are you asking these questions if you're not teaching it? And if you're teaching this concept, why aren't they included in the SLOs? And all of a sudden you could kind of like see like, ooh, the universe is really shifting. Things are really changing. I think using your flower analogy, that all of a sudden you start looking at the final product and keeping that in mind, you start thinking, okay, what it is that needs to happen in the classroom, in the program, in the institution, every step along the way before you get to the perfect flower. So thank you very much. So that's the difference between direct and indirect assessment. The direct project, something for students to do. See, I can judge, this guy's paying attention because he's writing, right? Then I look at the quality of the writing, and that's when I can tell that he's actually acquired, or he's in the process of acquiring the skills that are expected.
So our SLO assessments are direct or indirect?
Okay, SLO assessment, again, if you talk about outcomes themselves, outcomes are the final product, the flower, okay? Now, in the process of outcomes assessment, we could talk about what we know, formative assessment, which happens throughout the semester. Every single time you enter your class, you may not know it, but you do it. You do assess your students every single minute they are in the classroom. You look them in the eye and you say, hey, how are you doing? Did you get what we were just talking about? Is that clear? Do you have any questions? Is that, you have those conversations all the time. We call this formative assessment. At the end of the semester, we have a capstone project, we have a final project, we have a presentation of the portfolio, group project, whatever it happens to be. That would be the summative assessment that is going to tell us everything about what it is that students can do. In order, and again, we'll get back to this a bit later when we talk about the portfolios and rubrics. But I hope that answers your question. That SLO assessment, assessment of outcomes, really is the evaluation activity that happens at the end of the course, keeping in mind that students in this activity are going to be telling you to what extent they have acquired the skills that are expected of them.
Part of my problem here is I come from a high school where we had SLOs along these lines: adaptable problem solvers, team workers, organized critical thinkers, practical integrity, practicing integrity. So there's this, these are all what I would call anecdotal verifiers, and yet we want the data and the specifics. So clearly, we've improved from what I was doing at the high school, but I have a difficult time trying to make that transition, that bridge. How am I going to get enough data to prove somebody's an adaptable problem solver?
Excellent. Student learning outcomes have certain characteristics. And again, when you look at academic Senate literature, the definition of the concept, there are certain things that absolutely must be present. Outcomes are observable behaviors. And as a result of the observation, you have to be able to assess. So you have observation and assessment. Or the skill needs to be presented in certain form, and you need to, as a faculty of record, you need to be able to say to what extent the given skill has been acquired based on the activity you're observing.
In a measurable sense.
Absolutely.
So are all of those SLOs? Are all of those points?
Yeah, well, they were at our high school.
So
These are the kids that are feeding in here now, so.
No, but I mean SLOs part of these, of our COR, not of their curriculum, but of our.
No, that's what I'm saying. I need a transition.
Okay.
But your students are coming in with this in mind.
yeah, and so let me address that, because this is I tell you what you're raising is right now, currently right now, is probably one of the biggest challenges when it comes to developmental basic skills, education, the prerequisite skills. All of these things are really covered by the question you are asking. Because what happens is that, again, historically, students who come to community colleges, I don't know, I think you know the statistics. It's about, community colleges have about 26, maybe 30% success rates, which means that about 30% of students that we admit actually end up in some kind of a Cal State or UC system, as students there. And what the problem is that the transiency, the dropout is really very often contributed to the fact that we admit students to those basic skills or below transfer levels with an assumption that, hey, if the entry exam placement test tells us that they are, that they are 3 levels below transfer, well, then that's where they need to be. Which means that, student who has taken algebra course and failed and in high school comes to college, takes the placement test, well, sure enough, there's a shortcoming in algebra, so that student needs to take 3 more semesters of algebra. Okay, just put yourself in the mind of a student, hey, I never liked math, the teachers were mean, I never made it in algebra courses, I'm just a total failure. And now they really want to, put me through the grind of 3 more semester of this. And the thinking here is that, okay, wait, let's kind of like, hold on this effort, because if it leads to further failure, then why perpetuate it? Instead, let's look again at what it is that students can do. Let's look at their skills, evaluate those, and you know what? Maybe there is just something, certain area that student just doesn't understand. And if we were to enforce that, we would save that student, 3 semesters worth of their lives sitting in the algebra course. Perhaps there is something in the formula that student doesn't understand. Maybe there is certain part of math that was not covered in that student life. There was just not enough of a spark to make the student understand that, hey, algebra is really not that hard. You just have to kind of like look at it from a different perspective. And from my experience, I tell you, I don't know, it was like 8th or 9th grade when I was failing chemistry terribly. And I just happened to have, my uncle was a chemistry professor. So and I was failing chemistry. So I just kind of like, went on a fishing expedition with him one day, and I said, I really don't get those formulas. I really don't get them. So what's so hard about it? I mean, look, everything kind of like is interconnected, And he drew this visual, and I tell you, after a couple of days, I was like, give it to me, this is it. And I really tend to believe that, again, instead of having me repeat the chemistry course and going again, asking administrators for forgiveness, and saying, next year it will be much better, I'll be here on time, everything, whatever. It really made much more difference for me to see what it is that I was missing in terms of my own ability and understanding of the concept, rather than painting this broad picture that, hey, if I don't get this formula, that means I don't understand anything in chemistry, or I just cannot think logically, I cannot connect the dots, I don't understand, this critical thinking and whatever else out the window. It's really very, very demeaning to students when you do that. And I think that, again, that's where the discussion is. So you're raising a very, very, very important point, that perhaps considering outcomes, the flowers that we have in mind, if we were to roll back a little and just see what is the fertilizer, what are the components of our admission process that need to be considered, put together to address the needs of students who have always been underperforming. When you think about it, high school students, those who are completely ready, who have, again, as much as I don't like generalizations, those who come from well-off families, who have, that's right, they've been, with doctors in their, parents or whatever, their life is, out there after kindergarten, they know where they're going. The rest of the public will end up in community college. And I think that, again, if we only stress on the negative and we keep punishing them for the lack of success earlier in life, then how is that empowering? How is that really helping them grow?
So what are your suggestions? That we have more tutorials, more counseling, more let's find out what's really the problem? Like with me, I didn't get algebra, and my husband said, you're going to learn this, and he sat me down and taught me algebra. But your uncle gave you. But those circumstances aren't always out there. So do we need to remedy our problem by getting a counseling session with every student? We have amazing tutoring options here. Is that going to be enough? Are we going to affect their performance?
And again, before I even address that, I really want to commend your leadership here again.
Yeah, I agree.
For really creating a forum, a space where those questions are raised, because that's exactly where the discussion needs to go. That's absolutely, you're absolutely right. That's where we need to move. We need to look at the assessment data, see what the data tells us. See what the data tells us, what it is that those students are needing. You create a focus group. You talk to the counselors and perhaps teachers who do teach those capstone courses, the courses at the end of some kind of a sequence. Those faculty members who teach courses that prepare students for immediate transition to college, the exit courses. And then you have people around the table, okay, what is it that we need? Look at the data. Our students are not getting this. Maybe the theory is very well articulated. Well, that's because we have 2 other courses that deal with theory, so they are doing well in theory in this course as well. There's just no practical preparation. Maybe that's what we need to focus on. So again, that's when you create really a culture of looking at evidence, keeping in mind the final goal. That's what we're after. So again, I can only commend you for bringing this up, because I am not here to give you those answers. Those need to come from you. But you are absolutely right. You look at the data, you look at the resources, you look at the structure, you look at the culture, all those components come into play. And that's how you're going to start addressing the needs of the students in a meaningful fashion. Absolutely. I'm sorry, I had a couple of hands here. Yes.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking back on, my own education and my growing up.
That's right.
And the difficulties I had with math, I'm a science major,
Right.
math, and my father was an engineer, and math was his thing.
Right.
And he could not teach me.
Right.
I firmly believe in use of knowledge as a teaching aid because nothing became clear to me until I started in college chemistry. When I started in that, it's like the math just kind of, oh my God, I can use this knowledge, even though I may not have liked it earlier. Now it is clear.
Right.
And I firmly believe in labs to use what they're learning.
Right.
They can repeat it back. And questions, come up. Well, you learned that.
That's right.
Try to think about
That's
how
right.
you would gain that knowledge.
And what you just said is very focused on specific skills. Because again, if it's related to real life, you have to use those skills.
Right.
You can't just walk around speaking Chinese to people who don't speak Chinese.
Exactly.
So what's the purpose for you to be learning Chinese if ultimately at some point you just completely lose it? And when you think about it, this is what happens to many of the fields that we study throughout life. I studied a number of languages by now, besides, good morning and thank you, there's nothing I can say. However, studying those languages along the way really helped me understand other concepts. And that, I think, this is another venue, another very, very broad gate that really needs to be understood and appreciated. That we cannot just focus on computer programming because that's an area where students are going to find employment and nothing else. No. For us, for you, for us as members of a society, for our students as human beings, it is important for them to understand the concept of ethics. Don't tell me that ethics has no application in computer programming. Well, thank you. There we go. When it comes to, I don't know, music and arts and everything else that comes along. That's why, again, when you look at the skills and you combine them to the program outcomes, again, not just the course, it starts with the course, but the next step is the program. And finally, there is the institution. Again, we'll look at it in just a minute. When you look at the West LA College mission statement, what it is that you think you're doing to your students, what is your expectation of what it is that students need to take away from your courses, from your programs? That's the challenge. That's the challenge. You had a question, I'm sorry.
Well, it's not really a question, it's just, you already offered, I think, very simplistic. You gave the example of the chemistry. You saw a bigger picture.
Right.
That's a strategy. It's not a skill. And so if we keep talking about skill sets as opposed to this broader, can we storyboard, call it what you want, those
Right.
graphic organizer terms.
Sure.
But unless that's a focus
Right.
to provide that within whatever your course may be,
Right.
to see the connections, to help, and that is itself a skill, which I don't believe anybody defines as a skill.
Right.
And then her idea sounds to me like, well, maybe we were starting a little here, and we're going to see where people fall in.
Uh-huh.
And maybe we shouldn't deprive them of that higher conceptual thinking. We got to start at ground zero because we can't spell the.
That's right.
So those are teaching strategies
Absolutely.
and pedagogy and belief systems that are scoffed at, I think, sometimes because they're not a skill.
Again, that's it. I appreciate the comment, and this is, I certainly understand I think I see your point between the strategy and the skills. But again, this is a question that needs to be brought up again in this forum of educators, of people who are ready to look at the assessment data and see what it takes to improve what you just said, because this is a very valid point. And those preconceived notions or ideas that we have about our education, and perhaps those come from our experience or perhaps from teacher education courses that we have taken earlier in life.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, there we go. So see, all of us bring to the table really a number of concepts that I think, and again, gosh, now I value even more when I think about it, the analogy of the flower, that there is just so many different components that come into the notion of a fertilizer that's going to, you know, make the outcome visible and perfect to the extent that it can be.
This is not rocket science.
Uh-huh.
This is a belief system.
That's right.
And unless you believe that what you gave as your example is a valuable skill to be achieved, then you can talk about it forever and psychologize it forever.
Right.
Because it will never be accepted because we want to just keep talking about it. It's a skill to do what you said, to understand that bigger picture, to do what this lady talked about in terms of
Can I add something to that? Because I
Of
think
course.
that's,
Please do.
it's a powerful comment, and I think that's the beauty of the assessment process, that not only are students acquiring a skill set or an outcome, but faculty are also acquiring strategies, right? So it's a win-win situation when we start looking at it from a big picture. One of the beauties of TrackDAP and some of the revamping we've been doing is that we really want to get to those best teaching practices, to those specific teaching strategies that work, document them and share them. So it's not just the students getting a skill set from this process, but it's the teachers acquiring best practices as well.
There we go.
And bottom line is
Sharing.
sharing.
That's right.
Okay, so this is like methodology sharing on how to acquire these skills.
Mhm.
So that's what you need to share.
That's right. And again, the starting point, because I also appreciate your comment that, you know, doing versus talking about it. That's really the answer to many of the questions, because again, when you look at the assessment data as observable behavior, not just someone's opinion about it, but you really look at the assessment data, the results of what it is that students can do. Then you can have a conversation about which strategy could be applied to see the difference. So that next semester, next year, next time we have this conversation, we see improvement because of the instructional or instructional strategies that we have applied to make this work. So I think this really is a valuable comment. That again, we need to focus on practices and strategies that work for the benefit of our students to create, again, the outcome that we have in mind for the course, for the program, for the institution, so that it becomes a very conscious and very driven process rather than just sharing of the ideas that never really amount to much of anything.
I can carry this on forever, but I
Oh,
won't.
thank you.
We're just on the first line.
That's right, yeah, I was just gonna say. I think we've come through this, thank you.
Yeah, I was waiting for more.
You're open to discussion, though. Soon we're gonna find world peace.
Isn't that the idea? Isn't that the idea when you think about it? You know, again,
And this is something interesting. Education, actually, in my opinion, it is very complex. We're talking at the community college level, but I teach in the dental hygiene program.
okay,
We get our students that they come with straight A's, GPAs, 4.0s,
that's right.
and then when we try to teach them how to perform a dental prophylaxis or a cleaning, they completely crash down.
Right.
And I have kids coming to my office in tears that they feel humiliated, they feel a disaster, they feel a failure, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and this goes in many aspects. Okay, I joke with them that I said, as a dental hygienist or any health care for that matter, if you do the wrong assessment, potentially you can kill somebody. You can kill somebody, all right? And it's true, all right? There are plenty of evidence out there, people that out of a simple cleaning, they ended up developing an endocarditis and gone, all right? So, the problem that I face, that we face as instructors in that type of program, is the students come and they tend to learn in packages. They are very good at memorization. All right, they are very good. They memorize the package A, B, and C. But unfortunately, when you're treating a patient, you have to combine those 3 packages at the same time, plus your skills, hand skills, plus. And that is, when I see that, soon we're going to find more P's, because the bottom line is how they crash in their skill that they are learning with us here at the college level, all right, in part is a product of what they learn from kindergarten and all that. Right. I have 2 kids, one in 3rd grade, another one in 1st grade. And it is offensive, and I don't even know how to say it, but within the same class, all right, all these kids are going to move to the next grade in 3 different levels. Right. Thank God mine, according to them, is in the top grade, on the top of the level within the same grade. But what about the other 2 groups below, okay? My kids are reading way ahead the books that the other kids don't even have, apparently. They have tables, they divide them in different tables and all that. What about the other 2 tables, that are not at the same level, all right? Are the instructors, the teachers, giving up on those 2, or automatically they are accepting that, well, within this same grade, we have 3 different categories. Automatically you identify that there are 3 different levels and 3 different groups of kids. The smart, the average, and the below average. And this is how they're going to be moving forward. And this is how some of those kids come to us. That's right. And suddenly we have to treat them, we have to assess them at the same level. And trust me, we do give chances to them. Right. We try to work with them and all that. But at the end of the day, the assessment has to be done to all of these groups. The assessment is only one for the entire class. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. We learn, better strategies. If you had seen our syllabus 5 years ago, it was 10 pages, all right? 5 years after, it's like 30 pages. Soon, probably, we will need to, I don't know, So, because we learn something different every single time, okay, every single class brings something good and something bad. That's right. Ethics and healthcare now associated with computers and all that, it's a critical issue, But again, everything goes that for the student, they come at the majority of that. They are the ones that no matter where they go, they're going to succeed, and that's how it is. But the vast majority that we notice is that they still come in packages. Right. I'm running an experiment this time, all right, that I'm telling the students, this slide will be in your exam or your quiz. Yeah. And I actually do it. The only thing that instead of stating that it's a male patient, it's a female. Instead of being type 1 diabetes, it's type 2. And they fail. That's right. Why? Right. Because they are not incorporating the thinking. And maybe my strategies, I take that on my own, maybe my strategy to pass that to them is not working in some levels, or they are still trying to learn into the packages, and at the end it gets kind of difficult to make that match. That's right. So that's what I'm saying, that this is close to finding world peace, because it is really complex. But the sad part is that we are getting these kids when they have been already shaped, And I agree, as the SLO's, the assessment, it's an excellent tool to identify those, learn from the class that we went through, and hopefully improve that one in the future.
And I just wanted to latch on to your comment about those students who are, who have really high GPAs. They are coming in and really failing at sort of human level, that they are just not prepared to handle the perhaps emotionally or otherwise,
critical thinking.
Well, there we go. Again, that's why that underscores really the importance of, again, ethics and philosophy and language arts and literature and everything else that comes into the composition of what it is that human being thinks, what it is that they feel when they interact with others, how they react with, how they interact or how they react to adversarial circumstances and so forth. So these are the things that, again, probably will not get them ready in one course, but the composition, again, of the whole college as an institution, this is really the outcome that we would like to get out of them. Be ready, be prepared, be your best when your best is required. You know, and that's really that's the goal. So thank you for the comments. But I wanted to take this opportunity and latch on to one more thing, because it is, I think you mentioned the importance of creating the strategies, and again the fertilizer thing that just kind of like, you know, jives within me all of a sudden. I think that's how I'm connecting those dots. Ask yourself, because I did this experiment on my own when I went from department to department at Santa Ana College. You know, I was invited to, you know, talk about TriGlad and SLOs, just like pretty much like here, except from department to department, you know, addressing these compartments, right? The boxes. And but what I was after is that every time I went in, I would look at the agenda to see how much time faculty under the leadership, either administrators or their department chairs and whatnot, how much time they spend talking about student learning. What a novel idea. You remember the discussion between the difference between direct and indirect assessment? The indirect is what's happening in the department meetings. The direct is what we are really missing on. We talk about, okay, we don't have enough TAs, office politics, somebody's birthday is next week and the dean is retiring. That's what we are after. When it comes to student learning, actually looking and discussing student assessment data, it's like non-existent. So what do we think ourselves, you know, what it is that we collectively expect of our students is really an implied notion. It's inferred. It's something that we think and we hope is going to happen because we bring issues of strategy and culture and whatever else in our department discussions. But again, looking at the specific data of student assessment is something that we simply don't do enough. Someone had, yes, sorry.
To go off of what he was saying, I'm a recent graduate in 2015, and I was that student that came in and was very distressed. So I was actually assessed on how I handled that.
Right.
So my professor would have weekly journals or whatnot, talking about how we would thought stop. So that was an actual skill that I had to acquire as to how I would deal with the real life situation. And then he would give us feedback, and everybody would come in and say, man, why are we getting graded on how we feel? That's not fair.
Right.
I mean, my feelings are my feelings.
Right.
But it was an assignment, and you had to do it. You had to do it.
Right.
There was no option.
Right.
So that was a good, assignment. And I benefited from it. I enjoyed it, and I still practice it till today. So it's one of those things where that story just hit home, because that's exactly what happened to me as I was going. I was an undergrad for 7 years,
Oh gosh, yeah.
trying to figure it all out.
Right,
That's
right.
how it all happened. But
That's right.
luckily, it brought me back to here. So
Super. Yeah, that's why it really is important that whenever you think of outcomes for your own course, those skills that students need to get, the feelings kick in. We all perform differently, no matter how clever and perfectly capable we are. We all perform differently under different circumstances. The light in the room, the audience, the temperature, did I get enough sleep last night? All those things come into play. And especially when you mention, medical fields, you're absolutely right. Those decisions that are made on the basis of the circumstance really make a difference in, life and death situations. Absolutely. So I like to think that we have covered the questions here. Assessment of transfer skills and student futures. I think we alluded to this enough. So as promised, I would like to draw your attention to what it is that SLO College has as its vision, a gateway to success for every student. Okay, 2 parts of this sentence: success and every student. Success and every student. how do you know that what it is that you're doing as an institution is really empowering students to be successful? What are the questions that you think you could ask when you look at that vision statement? Because, okay, success can be measured in all kinds of different ways. And obviously we have such a myriad of students that it's really next to impossible for us to tell. Really, students who come in for a couple of courses because they need to get better at their workplace, they are just as successful as those who transfer to a four-year institution afterward. So the question is, and again, this is perhaps for you to answer, how are you going to know that what it is that you're doing makes students successful? Not just students, every student. Okay? The mission. West LA College provides a transformative educational experience. Okay, when you write that, how do you know that it truly is transformative? What do you mean by that? Does this mean that students change as human beings? And if that's true, that's a very lofty, very positive goal, no question about it. How are you going to know that it actually happens? Good question. There we go. That's
The only answer I think of immediate is assessments.
Again, and we are not necessarily talking, and again, mind you, remember the discussion about direct and indirect assessment, right? We don't want to give students a multiple choice test asking them, to judge their transformation from that. You could look at, perhaps some kind of a student survey at the time of admission, and then a survey when after 1 year or when students leave. And that is going to really give you good information. But hey, are we equipped to do that? I mean, I don't know if that's something that you do. Yes?
Well, how I do it, it has probably nothing to do with what you're talking about, but the quality of the final work that they produce. I can just see, it's evident to me that they improve by the end of the semester.
So perhaps, no, that's exactly what we are talking about. I think we are talking about the same thing. To observe growth, you do have to have some kind of a baseline, I suppose, of starting point, right? So you give students an assessment, and again, I'm not talking about standardized tests, not that it cannot be, but there are drawbacks to it. So you can perhaps think of a project or ask them for an understanding of certain concepts that have something to do with the course, and then you give the same survey at the end, and then you're going to know, to what extent they've grown. Okay, that certainly is transformation. But then again, that's just the course. If you were to get together within your department and talk about the goals for the department and align them with the transformation for the college, all of a sudden you're onto something. You're onto something. Because you are going to, again, create those assessments that could be combined together to reflect on what it is that students have learned, not only in one course, but in a sequence of courses. There's probably other courses that students are taking concurrently. Well, those things must be amounting to something. And if there are no threads between those courses, students will feel like, just like this gentleman that just made comments about the medical field, that we feel like, math is my domain. English, does English? Was it geography? It's just kind of like, and students take those courses concurrently, and we are so completely oblivious of the fact that we don't seek actively, we don't connect across the board throughout the semester to amount to some kind of a institutional experience for the student. It's more like, this is my domain. You're going to be best at it. West fosters a diverse learning community dedicated to student success. All right. I think, again, we heard those comments about the importance of assessing students who come here from all kinds of educational backgrounds that at least initially, well, probably across the board, have all kinds of goals in mind. And they progress through programs, they progress through our certificates, progress through preparation that we set up for them To what end? Well, that's for them to find out. But our challenge is dedicated to that. Our challenge is to make sure that all along the way we tell students, we show them, we work with them in the context of this dedication for their success. That again, what we have in mind is not necessarily A+ in our course, but the connection, collaboration, intersection with other activities, with everything else that happens on campus, so that when students are done, they are prepared, they are ready to go. And they are not only computer programmers who can do one specific language, but that they can do it in an ethical manner, that they can do it with critical thinking, that they can do it with a group of people, that they can communicate about it. So all those things are expressed right here. The question, how are you going to know this is taking place? Through quality instruction and supportive services, the college develops leaders who encourage excellence in others. Do you remember a gateway to success for every student? Do we really create leaders? Is that what we have in mind when we interact with our students? And if so, how do we know? How do we? Yes, sir.
I just want to make something that I observe a lot is to measure how successful a student is, you need to know their goal. And we have about a dozen educational goals. So someone that states they want to transfer, you measure their success by whether or not they transfer. But someone that's here for cultural enrichment, which is a goal,
right.
Personal cultural enrichment. That's a whole different measure. Because we measure by completion rates.
Well,
not everyone is here to complete.
Again, keep in mind the direct and indirect, you know, again, you're absolutely right. That's why, again, I think what's more important is that we create a forum, a space where we can talk about those measures, because that exactly, those questions will lead us to very specific assessment or evaluation activities that will be taking place throughout campus for all kinds of different reasons, to assess all kinds of different goals, absolutely. You cannot be, again, dismissive of those students who are coming here for a course or 2 or 3, and they are out the door, because that's enough for them at this point in their lives. You cannot punish them because they have something completely different in mind from what it is that we think our institution is designed for. If we are after transfer, then every single student who comes in and doesn't transfer is going to be counted as a failure. Well, that may not necessarily be the case at all. Students are successful along the way because they just have different goals, different life needs, different expectations of what it is that they need to be doing at the time. If anything, we are here to support them, to evaluate them, show them the different paths. But we, under no any circumstances, should we be out there to punish them, to judge them and say you're deficient, or go to 3 levels below transfer because you've been training algebra all this time.
Right.
Where is the logic behind that? Sorry.
So being a very focused individual and sort of narrow in my focus, I go back to your original example. It was about connecting the dots within one discipline. What if you were connecting the dots between disciplines? What you're calling direct versus indirect, I have a slight variation on that I've always used about implied, but not directly stated. So we assume students get the implication because it's not been directly stated. Therefore, if connecting the dots is a skill, and we were to directly state that skill, whether it's within a subject area or between disciplines, interdisciplinary, and made it even a course, or at least a goal of the college to have that happen in all courses, maybe that would accomplish the goal without making it too complicated.
That's right, and what you're really addressing with this example is this alignment between learning outcomes at the course level and what it is that happens at the program level. Absolutely. All our courses, again, we think that we exist in isolation. But we really cannot be thinking that way anymore, or at least we need to understand that it's not true. That's right.
So how would you
We
then
don't
directly
exist in the
assess
vacuum,
that?
and that's the question. How, at the program level, are we going to assess students' ability to connect the dots? Think of that. You have a department meeting, and you realize collectively that it really is paramount for every student's success to see bigger picture. Okay, great, very idealistic, very driven, very focused goal. How are we going to know that students actually can do that?
And can we know it just with a very small faculty group? Because that, and I have to bring this up because it's one of the things that we have to work around if we really want to make assessment a brand of all institutions in California. The contract sometimes works against us to say, well, faculty aren't required to dialogue outside of the classroom. And this year, when we talk of institutional learning assessments, program learning assessments, service area outcomes assessment, student learning outcomes assessment, the middle ground of that is dialogue. Everything we're inspiring about right now, we're like, wow, yeah, everything makes it, it's about dialoguing, it's about conversation, tracking, and sharing. But if the contract is a strong stone that can't be moved and we have to work around it, how do we get to that fruitful dialogue, that consistent dialogue that will permit us to connect the dots?
That's right, that's right. Well, that's the question. And again,
because then you just have a program learning outcome evaluation done by the chair
That's right.
and two motivated faculty
and we
members.
are checking it off and we're done. That's right, absolutely. That's why again, this is going to sound like a cliche by the end of the day when we are done, because again, it's your leadership that allows for those conversations to take place. And I think this is what needs to happen. That I'm not going to tell you do X, Y, and Z, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3 in that order, or you're going to fail. That's not the case. What needs to happen is that you need to sit down and create a space, atmosphere, where you have a collegial exchange of what it is that works and what doesn't work. So that those issues of contract will inform the discussion and will be addressed at some point. That's why the whole SLO and program alignment and institutional alignment is really a much wider effort than what it is that's required by accreditors. It's not really typing of the report and making sure that the chancellor signs off on it and we are done. That's not the point at all. The point is to look at the mission statement and see how we align contractual issues and faculty issues and support services issues and what it is that the school facility, I mean, you name it. All of those things need to fall into place to make sure that every student is successful. That's where the work is.
And so a critical point that I should point out right now, sort of outside of this, is that for every member who's here today, that you take this information to a division meeting, that you spark the conversation, perhaps not do a full-blown presentation, but that you start the conversation on how is it that we're really fostering our vision and our mission at the college level, at the program level, right? When you're at the division meeting or you're at Student Service Council, how is it that we're fostering all these dots through assessment and start that conversation? And you bring up the point, yeah, that leadership plays a big role. A good leader is going to shift the culture, is going to create enthusiasm and motivation, but it's the multitude of bodies that creates change or creates consistency.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
One leader can be gone, go get another higher level leadership position, and then what? If the multitude of bodies are, so we need the masses. My personal take in this is I have to work with 415 faculty members. We need all these 415 faculty members to be oriented, informed, and motivated, and everyone plays a dot connector influence role.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
So please take this, my point is, please take this to your division meeting or your student service council meeting, and whatever you retain from this, start that conversation.
Make it work, absolutely. You already had your PRT visit, right? Because I just completed mine last month. I went through, we
What's
visited.
PRT.
What did I say?
You said PRT, what is it?
Partnership resource team. And we
Thank
have,
Sorry. I thought PRT, that's right. I thought I just.
so they're a group of assessment experts, and we have a team here at West as well, and we're getting some funding from them for PLO and SLO enhancement, and this is sort of the start to make sure that we do the same thing we did with SLOs, we do it with the.
Is that a state grant?
I guess
Yes, it is.
state level
There's
grant,
the Institutional Effectiveness and Partnership
It's
Initiative.
not
from the
a
Chancellor's
federal
Office.
grant, or?
No, it's not. It's a state initiative, and there are 113 colleges in the state, and the goal is to cover all of them at some point, but it's on a voluntary basis. It's sort of like an accreditation visit without accreditation. It's really for the college to figure out where the weaknesses are and how to improve on certain functions.
We have no weaknesses.
No.
Well,
That's
so
been
if even
I understand what you're saying. It's-
okay, so the idea is to perhaps look at the processes, look at the resources, match those things again for the benefit of the students. What it is that needs to happen, and I tell you, my experience as I went through my PRT visit was from day one. I mean, really, the minute we as a team stepped on the campus and started talking to people, you know what was probably the most important variable that just permeated everything that happened?
What?
School culture. School
Oh,
culture.
yes.
Nothing else matters. Nothing else. All colleges have exactly same rules, pretty much same funding, and if they don't, they can get, or whatever it happens. Rules are pretty much the same. It's what we do with what we have that's at our disposal, what's available. That's what makes a difference. So I tell you, when we were meeting with the VPs, with the deans, with the faculty, with the labor unions, with the classified people, all those things became so clear that it's almost like, living in a family. And there are people with all kinds of different opinions influencing the decisions from all kinds of different angles. And for some places, contract would be the paramount, the other one, academic senate is running everything. Then there is this very, very strong VP, but not the other, So it's really very, very interesting how it plays out. See, again, we don't have a forum, we really don't have a place where we could sit at the table and reflect on our culture, how the decisions are actually made, what drives accreditation. Why is it that it's just a document that everybody hates? Why is it that we have to go through, jump through the hoops, and we just don't see the end of it, and it really amounts to nothing but an administrative and clerical task. So those are the things that, again, we collectively need to sit down in a safe space, figure out how to make it work. Gosh, it didn't take quite a bit of time, but I think it's been informative. I wanted to have similar discussion about what it is that the values for West LA College are on your website, starting with excellence, ethics, empowerment, and engagement. Again, if you were to be serious about it, those things should probably be on the agenda for department meetings, if not every single one, maybe every so often.
But are you saying, so right now, the focus is program learning outcomes, right?
Yes.
You're saying for that discussion, we should be evaluating our values?
Absolutely.
But programs have their very specific learning outcomes, right?
Sure.
And so you're saying sort of tie them up?
Well,
or-
yeah.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that we start with the SLOs for the course level.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so all courses, as we discussed earlier, courses, the content of the courses, the instructional strategies, as well as what it is that students are getting out of the courses, need to be connected to one another. Because again, students don't just take one course in a semester. There is other things that they are doing on campus in the fall. So it's not just one course, probably. It's not only one connection to the library. There is not only one connection to the counseling office. There is only not one connection to the dean, if need be. It all amounts to some kind of an experience that students go through upon admission. So they start the semester in the fall and they start going to different courses. They interact with all kinds of people on campus. But it all needs to be, all those interactions, whatever happens, really need to be pointing to the values as outlined on your website within the scope of the mission and the vision for the college.
Those 4 E's are like the spokes of an umbrella, and underneath are the classes. And have I got it?
That's exactly right. That's why, again, addressing Louis' question, when we start with courses, every step along the way within the course, we need to know that our course does not exist in a vacuum, that the course is aligned with another course, with a student support service of sorts, with something else that's happening on campus. Those things put together amount to program outcomes, because again, computer engineering or language arts or economy or whatever the department happens to be, you would like to really enlighten the students. Look at the vision, look at the mission. These are the values. These are the things that you really want your students walking away with. So again, your course is not going to be focused on the acquisition of only skills that are linked and pertinent to your specific discipline. You need to be mindful of the fact that students, while they are learning what it is that they are learning in your course, are also exposed to values as expressed by excellence, ethics, empowerment, engagement. 4 E's, did you say?
Yes.
So how does it look? So at the course level, we have an assessment instrument, right?
That's right.
Assessment method, very specific, and we assess the course with it. At the program level, how does assessment look?
Ah, there we go. That's for you to figure out. I can certainly tell you.
Language, like in English, for us, we have, or language arts, I'm sorry, we have 7 PLOs.
Yes.
7
Program learning outcomes, okay.
outcomes.
All right.
And I'm thinking, okay, so how does the assessment look? Is it treated as a whole? Is it treated as singular units?
So, well, who knows? Perhaps it would be a good idea to have a conversation, first of all, about what assessment means. How do you evaluate X, Y, and Z? Because I think someone already mentioned that there are different components of the course, and they cannot be all measured with one 63-point standardized test. It's just not going to work. So what we need to do is design, I think we were talking about the survey, right? At the beginning and at the end of the course. The similar thing has to be done, or could be done, for the program. Okay, if our students are admitted here, what are their expectations as they enter? And what are their expectations? What are their goals? What are their things? What are the skills and ideas that they take away? How to design the assessments? And how often to administer them, what they should look like, that's entirely up to you. My point is that you really need a space when you're going to be asking these questions.
Okay, so just a quick snippet, and I know you don't want to go into this direction, but how are other colleges doing it?
I could go in that direction. That's not a problem. But I think what you could do is, there is an, I don't mean to, let's just say, let's do our research. Okay, so I just completed data, SLO assessment data desegregation project with Academic Senate. And what we have done is after realizing that there isn't really much about data desegregation in literature, we started going after different colleges throughout California, looking at their accreditation documents. And that's perhaps a start. I would probably suggest that. So in a sense that, you know, to see what it is that others do, well, just go and check. There is, you know, obviously Los Angeles is a huge, I mean, your district has how many, 8, 9 campuses, I think. So you have, you know, so you have quite a, you know, a number of resources right there. And then there are those colleges that are listed on ACCGC website as the ones who have just recently been accredited. And in case of data desegregation, for example, those would be the colleges that just finished their accreditation within last year. So they have some information on their website about that particular concept. When it comes to, again, student satisfaction or student expectation or student perception, you know, there is research projects from here to eternity. You can just go to Eric database, you know, as a matter of fact, I'm sure your library stuff is very friendly. I always love librarians. You can just go to them and say, you know, hey, I would like to research the concept of you know, student satisfaction or student perception of our institution. How do I go about doing this?
So the e-portfolio method is one form, right?
Well, then that's next. That's right. No, I'll be happy to, you know, just move on. And that's because if that's of importance to you, then let's make sure that we are going to address that, because for the most part we really have discussed a number of those questions. But at least, you know, I'm happy to see that there is the resonance for this. You know, so again, it is important for us to lay it out on the table and say, you know, these are the outcomes, you know, the flowers that we have in mind, and this is how we are going to get there. And we are going to align all kinds of resources for this to happen. It's just that it needs to happen in an atmosphere of a discourse, of a discussion.
I'm listening to all this, and I'm part of the Allied Health division. And we're like a separate entity because our students already have to have the English and the math. They have to have 2 years to get into this department.
Right.
And we have quite a few people involved in the department. We have meetings all the time and on different levels, because our students are here for so many classes within that area. And I'm listening to everything that's going on, and it all applies, and it is, we do assessments on every student every day. And they have to do certain things a certain way.
Right.
And then if they don't, then we grade them.
Right.
So we have sheets and sheets of papers and papers. We have to keep them. Each instructor has to keep all this paperwork for 7 years. Just, I won't even tell you what mine is. But there are boxes and boxes of all this.
Right.
And it's helped immensely, because then every few weeks when we meet with our director who is here, and he has to meet with all these different departments within that. And we have these students in the first semester, and then they go on to another group in this entity, and we compare how they've grown. So we assess them as they go on. And I understand how this works, and I love it. I want to understand what you're mentioning about an e-portfolio and how that helps with this. Is that tracking them from the beginning to the thoroughly through, because they use that on their college when they go on, or their career, because that's something that's accessible at their privy.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I think you mentioned, you just said what it was, just boxes and boxes of
things that we've noted and notes that we've done, and
Right.
then we
See.
do reports to the district, you know,
So,
to our
so
director.
that's exactly what it is, and that's the case for portfolio assessment.
Okay.
Because you can, and again, this relates a little bit to the discussion of the difference between formative and summative assessment. Formative is what happens throughout the semester. You form
Right.
what it is that students do. That's why we call it formative. Summative is a sum of everything that happened throughout the semester, right? That's why we call it summative. So summative assessment would be some kind of a culminating project, which will, again, consist of a number of little projects or reflections, documents, artifacts, things that students produce to show what it is that they can actually do, and that's what we are after. See, again, it's very easy for us, or at least we tend to limit and narrow our discussions to those numbers to really numbers as reflections of what it is that students do. You know, you perform at 63%, you perform at 75%. I obviously know who is a better student right away, right? And that's the problem. Because again, those numbers really, just like grades, don't really tell you much of anything, because they are usually aggregates of some larger, many other concepts. And that's the danger. So the portfolio is going to allow you to really look critically at what it is that students can do, and you are going to be able, or at least you should be able, to look at the content of the portfolio and know right away what it is that they do well, and what it is and where it is that they are lacking. And those things could be quite varied, quite different. Some students, you know, again, as dry in my mind as computer science sounds, you're going to see traces of creativity or lack thereof when you look at what it is that students have produced throughout the years, throughout the course of the sequence of courses, or at the end of the program. So again, direct versus indirect measures come into play as a very important part, because again, when you look at the result of a standardized test, again, keep in mind that standardized test is just one test, happened only on one specific day, and who knows what went into this, right? You can't penalize, or some tests do, for penalize students for wrong answers. What is authentic assessment, by the way? Because that's the concept that I don't think we discussed about. Authentic assessment. What does authenticity mean in this case? If you were to use something that's authentic, how do you understand the word authentic? Perhaps maybe that
Original,
word. Sorry?
Something that's original, that you're the
Absolutely. That's right.
the genesis of.
There we go.
Like what?
You are the origin, the genesis
Like an
of
essay.
it.
You
An essay
could.
test. Yeah.
Something
Okay, it would
that's
be our performance of how they treat a patient and
That's
our
right.
observations.
There we go. Versus something very, very theoretical, very
Right.
hypothetical.
How
Absolutely.
would
So
you
that's
treat a patient?
that's exactly right. And again, portfolio is more likely to really create a space where students can reflect on what it is that they can do with much better efficiency than just showing you, hey, on my last 3 tests I got 65, 78, and 82.
You
Where
would
do you
be
think
so
I
surprised at how people can do theory and they can't do it in practice.
That's right. And even if you have only those 2 SLOs in every course, 1 theory, 1 practice, you will see what happens with the whole program. Because again, if students consistently are good in theory but lacking in practice,
They have to meet.
and you really need to know at the program level, and by golly, the institution, that's absolutely
So
imperative.
is your preference portfolio assessment? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if it's necessarily a preference, but it certainly is a way to put together, to compile assessments. Again, throughout the student history or their evolution as they transform. That's right, as they progress in the institution. And I think someone already you were the one who talked about the boxes. That's what I was thinking about. That see the advantage of electronic portfolio versus traditional one is that, you know, cyberspace, you know, online storage is really unlimited for all practical
Well, it
purposes.
goes to that,
So,
but we have to keep the hard copy.
well,
Same with us. We have to
again,
keep our files.
if that's what's required, then again, this is something for you, for your department to figure out.
Legally, we have to.
There we go. If that's the case, you know, again,
We
once there
have to
are,
be able to show performance if we have an assessment and the advisor is
Right,
challenging
right,
something that's gone on.
Right.
We're the only one.
right. Well, there we go.
That's a legal issue.
So that's why again, you have a forum to address this.
Right.
You're going to identify right away those things that cannot possibly be changed for all kinds of different
Continuity.
reasons. And then you start working within that frame. Absolutely. That's a very, very, very important point. The difference between portfolio and e-portfolio is just that. But also, there is a great, 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 great benefit of sharing. See, when it's just a piece of paper that goes into a box and the box goes into a storage place, then nobody ever really potentially looks at that work anymore. When it comes to electronic version of the portfolio, well, the students realize, or at least they should from the beginning, that, you know, okay, wait, this really needs to be your exemplary work because it's out there for the world to see. You're going to publish it somewhere, you're going to compare it, you're going to be looking at others, again, for the benefit of learning. So instead of having this, for lack of a better expression, defunct documentation that's going to sit somewhere in storage, you have evaluation of assessment that's transparent, it's accessible for everyone to see and for everyone to learn from.
Well, I think the students have a portfolio that they put in for projects that they do to show, and they collect that, and that's what they now
There we go.
use for their, what do you call it, resume.
There we go, that's a
It's
very good
connected.
example. But just imagine that instead of a final, you know, again, multiple choice test, you're going to have a conference-like poster-like session in the classroom, you know, where students are lined up and presenting their project, and one half of the class first goes and looks at there, and then the other half of the class, you know, looks at the other half later. So that's just an option, it's an idea. But look, computer programmers all of a sudden have to present. All of a sudden they have to answer questions. All of a sudden they have to have enough creativity to put a poster that's attractive. Or perhaps, what if they were to work with 2 or 3 people? So see, that can be done pretty much in any discipline you envision. Anywhere really, in any classroom situation, this is something that can be done for the benefit of the students, so that they realize that, again, their effort does not exist in a vacuum. It's not the only thing that matters, that they are proficient in one specific skill.
Well, we did that physically last week, wasn't it? Poster contest, did you see that?
Yeah.
But how does, right, we have a nice poster showcase every year which we use to assess our institutional learning outcomes. The e-portfolio would be more at the program level, right?
That's right.
So how does one, at what point, so if a student comes in to an English 21 course, beginning level basic skills course, and by the time they get to 103 is the exit to transfer. For me, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. Where do they start and where do they end that electronic portfolio? Like when I was in grad school, which is one of the best things that I take from it now, or one of the best things that I use now, I'm sorry, it was done in 1 semester, it was a website. Now it's the same website I use for all the classes I teach today. So probably one of the most valuable, tangible things that I got out of grad school. But it was done in 1 semester, so the e-portfolio is done at the upper level courses or throughout the lifetime of the
Throughout the lifetime.
English 21 But that's gonna be difficult to
Okay.
coordinate from faculty to faculty.
That's right. So maybe let me just tell you, how many of you remember the movie City Slickers?
Oh,
Do you remember City
yeah.
Slickers? You know, there's this, you know, what was his
They
name?
go out to town.
Was it Bill Murray or what?
No, it's
what-
Billy Crystal.
Billy Crystal, that's the guy. See, I'm not really big on
They
people's
went
magazine.
to
Anyway, there is
ranch.
there is the scene, right, when they ride the chase cows from Texas to Montana, and
Yes, yeah.
they sit on the horse, and the old cowboy who is riding, you know, he knows it all, right? I mean, he's done it all his life, you know. So there's this City Slicker guy, you know,
Palance,
pulling
I
up to
think
him.
it
That's
was.
right.
Yeah, it was.
Hey, so hey, you've done it for so long, you know. What's the story? What is the meaning of life?
Yes, I remember.
You remember that, right?
Yes.
And then the guy, you know, the cowboy, without even missing a heartbeat, right? It's a movie, right? So he doesn't. Just so that there's only one thing that matters. Only one thing that matters. It's for you to figure it out. And that's really the question, and that's the answer.
Put it back on our
That's all I can tell you.
You know,
So when it comes to the portfolio, I think, I'll get to your question momentarily. I think it's, to be honest, the best way to do it would be what makes sense to you and what makes sense to your students. Again, you look at the vision statement and you feel that your students need to be exhibiting certain traits. This is what faculty needs to be doing. The portfolio needs to be reflecting those things. I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's all right. It wasn't a question, but I was just thinking of, as you were saying that there's like tons of software out there, even apps that do that. And one that came to mind was even looking up, thinking of TrackJack. And when we research and you can download our documents, once it's uploaded, as opposed to the boxes and boxes in your closet somewhere, now once it's uploaded, it's searchable with keywords.
Absolutely. That's right.
And
That's right.
when you come to, this just occurred to me, if, let's say if the department, everyone got together and adopted, oh, there you go, adopted one. And just say everybody use this for continuity of students in their department, then they have one way where all the teachers can sort of access
That's
that
right.
portfolio.
That's right.
And one thing that came to mind was
Also, just
this
put
one
them in
called
track.
Slack.
Yeah, Slack would work.
Slack
You know, we've
would
done
work,
this in the
right.
past. We had a thing called eFolio.
That's
That
right.
we used-
Slack?
Slack is a, yeah, Slack is an
Slack is
app.
like an app, it's like,
It's an app that acts like a thread, like
Yeah.
a Twitter thread.
And those apps pop up, you know,
All the time.
daily. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just no stopping it.
that's why I say if your department just says, all right, we're gonna go with this one.
That's right.
SLO.
15 minutes later, someone's gonna say,
Next-
oh, that's so yesterday.
Yeah,
That's
and
right.
it happens, it will be. It might be
Absolutely.
yesterday by the time you pick it, but still, pick one.
Absolutely,
That's a
absolutely.
great idea.
So these are just examples, because again, you look at what it is, you know, what it is that students can or like to do. Some are really good bloggers. Others will need to have Pinterest. Others will have to have, you know, I don't know, all kinds of other, you know, they can create their own website with their own theme and their own, you know, whatever unique visuals. But I think what matters is that, again, regardless of what it is that they are studying, the creativity aspect permeates everything. Then there is this part of transparency. How are you going to make the website appealing to your audience, right? How are you going to make sure that your peers learn something from you? How are you going to impress your faculty? What about your family? Are you going to send it to your mom via email and say, you know, hey, this is what I do in college? Again, if you keep it in the box, that's, you know, we're full of papers, that's not really very conducive to this,
I
right?
really have to talk to my students to figure out who they are.
There we
I
go.
have to spend time talking to them.
Community college. You're probably watching this video because your teacher just told you that you have to make an e-portfolio. You may be wondering what an e-portfolio is. Let's talk about that and how it can benefit you as a student. So what is an e-portfolio? Basically, creating an e-portfolio is like building your own website. It teaches you how to present yourself online in a professional way. The main purpose of an e-portfolio is to enhance your learning at Salt Lake Community College. E-portfolios are a place where you can keep track of what you've learned and why you've learned it. They help you engage in your education.
That's what you're asking about.
Here's an example. When you finish a class at Salt Lake Community College, what do you typically do with your old assignments? You guessed it. They end up in the trash or get lost with other files. With an e-portfolio, you can creatively showcase your best schoolwork using medias that go beyond what you can show on a piece of paper. Down the road, you can compare the work that you did to the work that you're completing now. E-portfolios provide a place where you can reflect on your learning and make connections between your classes, across semesters, and in your personal life. Have you ever taken a class and wondered, why in the world am I taking this? This class has nothing to do with my life, and I am never going to need to know this. While it may seem this way, the truth is, the learning outcomes of your classes are all connected to each other.
Yay!
For example, your humanities class and your biology class may not seem related, but you learn essential researching and critical thinking skills in your humanities class that you can use in your biology class. All of your learning at Solid Community College builds on each other. It's all connected. Your e-portfolio also benefits your instructors. Your instructors can get to know you by what you choose to share on your e-portfolio. Your e-portfolio provides instructors with helpful feedback. Your instructors can see if you are learning what they intended to teach by reviewing the signature assignments and reflections in your e-portfolio. Your e-portfolio benefits the school as a whole. Solid Community College uses e-portfolios to assess the general education program rather than giving standardized tests. Assessing e-portfolios can enhance the learning of the college. So, to recap, an e-portfolio can help you learn by giving you a place to reflect on and showcase your work, by connecting what you've learned in each class to each other, and by allowing you to see your progress throughout your education. As a result, your e-portfolio benefits you, your teachers, and the college as a whole. Pretty neat, huh? We hope this video has been helpful for you. If you have any further questions about e-portfolio and how to make them, feel free to visit us at one of our computer labs. No appointments necessary, or online at www.eportresource.weebly.com. Thanks for...
Next meeting is in Utah?
I like that video. So e-portfolios doesn't have to be finished.
That's right. That's right.
So a student can continue add after every course, right?
Absolutely. That's the idea.
And once we evaluate them.
Again, that's right. There's no end to it. And I as a matter of fact, I think, I'm sure you've done, especially those who teach writing, let's say, or I'm trying to think, how do you observe? Because in your mind, you see how students progress. And let's just say that, K-12 perhaps would be a better example because they go for the whole year. But you give students a prompt at the beginning of the year in September, and then in June you ask them to write the same to the same prompt. To the same prompt. That's right. And you instantly see the growth. And that's just, why this is really an eye-opening experience, not only for the teachers, for the faculty, but it is for the students themselves. Because now they get to go back and say, hey, I did this 3 years ago, look at this, wow. It's just amazing how much I have learned, how much I have changed, how much I have transformed. So that's absolutely the benefit.
The only drawback, I think, with, not with e-portfolios, but with starting an e-portfolio in a basic skills course is, well, I have to teach technical competence as well in the class now. It wouldn't be a problem for a computer science course, but perhaps for like a math course.
Right, but why is that a drawback? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't explain myself well. For the teacher, for some faculty, I can hear maybe saying, well, how am I going to teach technical competence? I don't know how to teach someone how to create a Weebly site, for example, or Slack.
Wait a minute.
Right?
I just finished taking the Canvas course.
Okay.
And I've taken classes on Canvas, and it's fabulous. I love it. But it's like this. It's like this.
I don't think we have an e-portfolio section in Canvas, though, because
a lot of the stuff you put into it, it's just like that.
My students have to make an
amazing.
e-portfolio before they leave one of my classes.
That's right.
Yes, I'm talking about, so I'm thinking holistically of all the disciplines. Think about all the disciplines, not just your discipline.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So that's why I think, okay, so when we start setting this is going to be sold, and this is the direction we're taking at West. We want e-portfolios because we want to get the SLO assessments.
That's right.
And it's one effective way to do so. But when we start setting it, I think with the basic skills courses, we're gonna have to do some training, perhaps some technical
Yeah,
competence
you'd be
training.
surprised how tech savvy your students are.
That's the advantage, yeah.
They don't need to learn
What do you
how
guys-
to do
what
a
do you use?
website. Like, they
Oh,
just
I know.
do a website.
And what do you guys use? What app or what online?
I let them choose whatever one they want to.
Examples?
But I point them in the direction of a Wix. Wix is a free website building thing
I
that
knew that. I knew that. You sent me an email with this.
it's cut and paste. And a lot of the students are already using it, and it goes back to that, they like making stuff. This generation loves making stuff and playing stuff and playing with it. And yeah, and so it's going to be harder to get the fossilized faculty to buy into the fact that the students are going to be able to do this, but the students can totally do this.
And that was my concern, the faculty, not the students.
Oh yeah, you should be concerned about the fact.
Yeah, that's my concern.
So the answer to this would be, again, you don't have to start with everything and anything on the planet for every single faculty member. First of all, you start with some kind of a needs assessment perhaps, and you find out what it is that teachers can actually do in terms of technology. And if teachers need training, well, then obviously we can provide that. But perhaps even without necessarily having to train large number of faculty on how to use Wix or any one of those websites, what you could do is perhaps show them how this is practiced when teachers don't necessarily, or teachers are not necessarily comfortable using technology, and how they can handle it in the classroom. Because if they were to ask students, well then I think we heard enough voices, right? I mean, these days, in ESL classroom, when I ask students, hey, go to dictionary.com and look up the word discretion, everybody pulls out the cell phone and they just do it right there on the spot. I mean, even 5 years ago, to be honest, I wouldn't even, think about it. Now it's just such commonplace, nobody even asks.
I have it so commonplace in my class that the students know to pull their phone out, because during my lecture,
That's right.
I teach film.
Oh.
And, I may mention a film to make a point, and I'm like, oh man, who directed that? Someone look up,
That's right.
who directed this, blah, blah, blah. And then,
Oh,
by the time they give me the name, I could make my point, and then this person has looked up the name, the year, and whatever. And I have like 3 or 4 of them in class, and
That's
they're just waiting.
That's exactly the point. So I think what matters is, to address the question of faculty competency, I think we could approach it from the perspective of how to manage this, rather than put a roadblock and say, oh, just sorry, I don't use more than my, Apple IIe that I bought in 1987, and I really want to stick to it because I really like it. Yes.
Yes, so I just asked her what side of classes she teaches. And so someone who deals with a larger lecture class, say 60 or 65 or maybe more, or maybe a few less, would you have any suggestions for how to carry this off in that larger venue? Because I said, it's a good idea, it's not a bad idea.
Larger, like 60 students, did you say?
Yeah, you're in per day, or per week, or whatever.
First thing that comes to mind is first of all, you group them, perhaps around students who will be, emerging leaders. So you can perhaps spend, 2 or 3 hours coming up with groups. And that's more manageable right there, because instead of explaining everything to 60 people, you're going to explain it to 15 groups, let's say, or even 10 groups for that matter. Then you have 6 students per group. And you have 10 groups to deal with instead of 60 individual students.
So you can do an e-portfolio
And then
by group.
you could do that. I mean,
Especially if it's an introductory course.
Especially if it's an introductory course. And then again, this is not to bypass the fact that every single member of the group has to contribute.
Right, but you can still.
There you go. So it's just that you leave it up to them to figure it out. And again, when it comes to the mission, to the vision, to the values, that's exactly where you are with this activity. Because all of a sudden students have to collaborate. It's not you're on your own. You are part of the group, you're part of the team, and guess what? You have to come up with solutions for your team. At the end of the semester, you're going to be making sure that those portfolio portfolios or projects are published, that everybody has access to them, that students go and they look one by one, and that's how they can assess themselves, how much they have grown, how much they differ. Oh, look, they've done this, we haven't done it, maybe we can improve it. Do even, a week or 2 weeks before the final project, do some kind of a review, reflection of what it is that we've studied in this semester. What are the concepts that are important? How are you going to address those, outcomes in your specific presentation or your collection of projects? So all those things come into play as you build this summative, culminating, ending project that will really be reflective of what it is that students have learned in the class. Just imagine, if students have a number of opportunities to reflect on the content of the course, rather than just, shivering there on Friday night, on Monday morning, the standardized test comes in, and then, I'm just not going to make it. That's a big conceptual difference when it comes to what it is that's happening in the classroom and how we keep our students accountable to what it is that they are learning. Okay, so these are the different tools. The next part, and I have half an hour left, right?
Yeah.
Or so. I mean, we can go to 2:30.
I think lunch is going to arrive anytime soon.
That's fine. Sure, of course. The service area outcomes, right? That was another part that I was supposed to cover. So again, I would like to start with some kind of a definition of the concept, and we did already speak about the importance of understanding and reflecting on what it is that's happening to students as they enter our institutions.
Can I just pause you for a second?
Sure, of course.
Before we get into this, which is a completely, still correlated but different topic, any aha comments or concerning questions about PLOs?
The program learning outcomes we discussed at the beginning, we went into e-portfolio, and now we are going to talk about service area outcomes. So we have those three distinct components of that I...
Service area is larger.
Well, service referring to...
And we'll discuss
it. Services, administrative services.
Oh, okay.
Not instructional.
Okay. So
I just have
something that I need to know?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have one question in terms of our PLOs. Do those refer specifically to majors in our department or in our particular program area? Or is it any student that passes through our, class?
See, that's...
Because as an arts teacher, I get all kinds of students that are going on to
Somewhere
other
else.
things, and then I have my students that are majoring in my area.
That's right.
So what are we
Well-
which population are we assessing with these portfolios?
I don't have the answer.
Do you want
Okay.
to? You want me to speak? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think if you're thinking program, it's your degrees and certificates.
Okay, good.
So
That's what I would
the way
think.
we look at it in computer science, is that's your program. Those
Yeah.
are the elements of your program.
So it's the students that are coming through, that are passing through my program with the idea of getting a transfer degree or a certificate.
Yeah, because we have
Okay.
one GE class, which is Introduction to Computers. Everyone practically on campus takes that course.
Exactly.
And we can't use that in itself to look at our program. Our program is the certificates and degrees in computer science.
Well, right, and the baseball team that takes theater history isn't really a good assessment of my program. They're awesome kids, I love them, but,
they add an element.
For e-portfolio project are...
Well, then, but your certificate and degree students are going to complete the e-portfolio, and they're going to you're going to track those e-portfolios throughout the classes that
Will
they
the other students also do an e-portfolio?
Yeah, they would, but then
We're just tracking the degrees.
yeah, and so you would keep, as you see these students again, you would reevaluate and look at their e-portfolio.
But wouldn't they already have an e-portfolio if they were coming through to another place? They would already have one, and they could element this one into it.
I know. That really, yeah. Go ahead.
I was countering back, never mind, it was already answered.
Well, the point of it is that There is, and again, this is something that we really didn't have time to discuss in depth, but there is a difference between student learning and student achievement. Student achievement are all those indirect assessments. Mm-hmm. This is the data about course completion, GPA, certificate completion, transfer rates. Those are indirect because they really don't tell you anything about what it is that students have learned. That's the problem. So there is the implication here, or assumption, is that students with high GPAs, those who transfer to, you know, four-year institutions at high rates, those are the ones who are successful. And I'm not here to dispute that. I completely agree. As I mentioned earlier, high GPA is a good predictor of student success later in life. No question about it. The question here is what it is that students has learned along the way. And that's the challenge. So when we look at the first course that you mentioned, right, that's so important that everybody in the whole institution practically takes, the question is what it is that students learn in the course, how those skills that they acquire help them be successful in courses that follow, and how those skills or activities that take place in the course relate to the college mission and vision. That's the idea. So again, starting from the course level to the program to the institution. The question of the e-portfolio is, I think you already explained that e-portfolio is just a way to manage documentation of student learning, maybe that way. Mm-hmm. So if this is the first course that students ever take, and they happen to be absent on the day when you start the portfolio, and then they don't open one, well, hopefully they will get one, you know, later as they progress through the program. But the idea is to, again, not to necessarily have a discussion whether this portfolio is supposed to reflect on student learning in a course or a program, but again, what it is that works for you. So again, if the values of the institution are important, then please make sure that as you go through the portfolios, and I think that again, this could be shared with other disciplines, not only within the one program or a few courses or certificate program or whatever it happens to be, that those values of the institution are reflected in the documents that are included in the electronic portfolio.
Okay, so what your portfolio is really ultimately going to be is a set of statistics that can be pulled up for educational to show progress and...
Yeah, well, okay, right. I don't know.
They'll be able to be used as statistics.
Yeah, they can be used, but these are the actual, that's
you know,
the beauty.
The student is doing the statistics for the institution or a company or whatever.
In that way. Well, I suppose that again, if the task for a portfolio is to generate some kind of a number that later is going to be translated into some kind of a measure of success for the institution, well, then that again, that's what you choose to do with those portfolios.
How many things are put up on that portfolio?
But I think it needs to go back to the discussion of what it is that we are going to measure. We talked about a number of things. You know, we started with student satisfaction or student perception of the institution. So I completely agree. That's exactly right.
We're talking about successes. Successes in art. Successes in English proficiency.
Absolutely.
Successes in geology.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. So this would be a collection of all those different artifacts and documents that really prove that students have acquired certain skills. This is the reflection.
Okay, so that's statistics to me.
Well, again, because if you were to translate this into those numbers, it ultimately does become.
And where they were acquired.
Sure.
Okay.
That's the idea. That's absolutely the idea. It's just that again, the statistics is not based on the collection of standardized tests,
right,
where learning is implied. It's a direct observation of student behavior and specific skills.
It would behoove West LA if they could get all their students to document any kind of West LA success on their portfolio.
Oh, there we go. That's a thought. That's a thought. Because I think that, again, if you were to ask directly students what it is that their expectations are, and to what extent they think that the institution met those expectations, I think that would be an excellent measure of success for your institution. Because this is the perception that ultimately, these are your clients, these are people that you serve.
You want to make sure that they know West LA exists and this is a success that you can achieve at West LA, and I'm a hand.
Couldn't agree more. When you think about it, we've designed, and again, this is the IEPI work and PRT teams and so forth, this becomes very clear that we designed and we built the institutions historically around certain notions that we think are good for the students. But ultimately, we really need to be asking those students, hey, did this really make a difference in your life? How difficult was it for you? Or how easy? Or what difference did it really make?
Yeah. It's, I have to go back to kind of my history here at West LA and the dental hygiene department. We get all kinds of literature. Now it's becoming more online literature, your journals and whatever. And students are asked to participate in creating documents and research articles because this is part of their education and they plan to get up there. And documentation in a journal is a big deal. Let's face it.
Absolutely.
And they do this on their journal site, but I'm sure that they're doing portfolios now too, because you look them up and it comes right up into their accomplishments. And that's the same idea as doing something here and having West LA's name, because it always says, where did you go to school? What's your history? We want to know about you. We've had our dean being published in some of the journals about our programs and what West LA is offering. So that's really wonderful. And we now have a bachelor's program. You know that. We have a bachelor program here, which is really wonderful. And all the schools, the colleges have taken on a bachelor in something in California. And it's quite an accomplishment for West LA to have this ability to teach people to go through that. It's a draw.
And again, the portfolio system will only help you document this. That the program has been actually successful.
Yes.
Because again, the GPAs or all those measures of student achievement really tell you only part of the story.
Exactly.
That again, you may have successful students, but really, there is something to be said about students who figure out how to navigate the system versus, they actually learned things in the process. Sorry.
I noticed that Salt Lake College, it seemed like they had either a program or something that looks at general education as a whole. Does any other college in California do that?
The general education assessment is a huge discussion topic.
I mean, related to that, I think if you do, instead of your program, specifically the art program, you look at general education, and that would be a way of assessing it instead of, because they're not passing through your program.
Here's one resource that I can share with Luis, but obviously again, I like YouTube, because again, conversations such as this one is much easier to just present, a nutshell of a thought rather than having to go through extensive publication. But the assessment of student learning, Linda Suski's is just an excellent publication, and it does have, I believe, a chapter or two on how to assess general education. Because again, we are looking at what it is that students need to know as a baseline, as a starting point. What it is that, in general, they need to be able to do to understand. Are they really capable of handling work at the higher levels? That's what we're after. So again, portfolio is going to show you the growth, and especially when you start at the general education level, then you're going to see, and I think it's more important that students themselves, see how much they have grown, how much they have developed, how much they have transformed, you know, in their own life, in their own learning, in their own perceptions and thinking about what it is that they are.
That was the goal of portfolio in the beginning, was so that you could ascertain your journey. And I'm thinking of art students who also, they put their finest work in and take it for consideration. So the idea behind that was an investment of the student into this process.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I took exception to the statistics, but I guess you're right. I just don't think of it that way.
Join it in.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
You
It
can
serves
see.
that purpose.
Sure.
But
sure.
I like the idea of being able to go on for a longer
That's right.
period.
That's right. That's
That would
right.
be tremendously advantageous.
Sure.
So why don't we push for that?
Yeah, we absolutely will, and I think that the next big thing, this is a very powerful conversation about instructional assessment, in addition to what we're doing already with the SLOs. But the next big thing is also assessing all of our services, which is also another powerful component of how students succeed. With the overall college experience,
Absolutely.
right? We rarely talk about, well, what the heck is going on with the service side? What kind of experience are the students getting there? How is that leading to their student success? Are the services being evaluated? Is evidence-based decisions being coordinated in order to improve those services?
That's right.
And at some point, I hope we take SAOs plus SLOs, connect them, and now we have a beautiful assessment brand that is just, it's securing student success.
So just, you know, again, in the interest of time, I'm glad you're pointing out the fact that all those things are connected, and I think that was very clear in the video as well, that we saw those different dots being connecting. Okay, well, again, our students touch on counseling, library, and they go to your classroom, or whoever else is there on campus, including security sometimes, that really makes or breaks a deal for them, because that's their life. They come in and they expect some kind of a service, and if they are not getting it, then obviously everything else that happens later suffers. So the question is, again, as it always has been, how do we assess this? You know, students don't get a certificate, or they don't really even get a grade necessarily when they go to the library, because they look up a thing, or you know, when they ask for directions to room X, Y, and Z, they are not graded on that either. However, we are, because this is what constitutes student success. If every single step along the way students find confusion and lack of guidance, then they are more likely to simply leave the institution and again be counted as unsuccessful. So how do we find out that those services that we provide, that very often are taken for granted, how do we measure those? How do we make sure that students actually take advantage of the services that we have to offer, and to what extent those services are helpful? So again, I can only tell you that survey is probably a good way to find that out.
Logging into the site, the room they go to.
You can, absolutely. There is, you know, every time they visit the lab and they log in, you know, that's the data that absolutely can help you with this. Then you can, again, going through the process of data disaggregation, you can check how many times a given student has accessed the lab, what was the preparation of that student, to what extent the lab made the difference, what is the outcome, to what extent student is successful in the course. So the lab would be there. Overall student satisfaction survey, I suppose you do that at least once a year, right?
Yeah. And I think we're going to go a little bit deeper than that. I envision a system just like we have for SLOs, because it's not just the library, right? We have admissions, we have the bookstore.
That's right.
Counseling, the non-instructional side, and a whole bunch of other services that we offer that need to evaluate, do the same thing we do in the instructional side. Share the best practices, right? Look at the data, create an action plan that will ensure, have a timeline when to assess, that sort of thing.
That's right, that's right.
How about a barcode?
Sorry? The barcode. You know, one thing that, you know, the word of caution here too
Well,
is...
they have an ID card, and they have it with them all the time they're on campus, so you know who they are. And when they have to go into a facility, there's an opening, put your barcode on there and it opens up.
So I had a discussion specifically with the librarians at Santa Ana College who do have a short survey, you know, for students who utilize library services, right? So student comes in and says, how do I look up, you know, a journal? Well, you know, you go to that shelf or you go to that website, or, you know, here's how you do it, and to request the full text, you have to go to the circulation desk and they'll bring it to you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's the survey. How did we do? Everything's fine already. 2, 3, 4 days later, same student comes back. Sorry, how do I access that journal? You know, and they ask exactly the same question again. And then the librarians are sitting there, okay, did I fail? Well, for you to figure out. Because again, think of yourself, right? I mean, this is something like, you know, that's how when I talk to people like, you know, from cable company or my cell phone or whoever, technical support or anyway, you know what? They can call me every other day, and I'm sure I'll be asking exactly the same question every single time. I have no clue. That's exactly right. So you just kind of like, you know, put yourself in their shoes, and, you know, to be honest, I would be happy that they come in to ask these questions because they are after something, they are onto something, they really need to have it. So I think that's a measure of success rather than their lack of understanding how the library works. Because again, if my major is, you know, whatever it happens to be but library science, then I am very likely to really be asking same questions over and over again. I mean, you just imagine, you know, again, go anywhere really, anywhere in life. Go to DMV, you know, I do registration only one time a year, but I tell you, I have to go through the whole tutorial how to do it online. Otherwise, and, you know, what's the VIN number, you know? Okay, I guess by now I know.
I just was thinking about the barcode thing again, and I tell you, if an instructor really wants to know if a student is active in the class and doing their report a month before like they're supposed to, and they have a barcode readout, you can pull it up and say, okay, they are doing research.
That's right.
So
That's
let
right.
me talk to them, even
That's
though
right.
it's stuck.
That's right.
That would be very cool, but I think it should be with all the units, not just the writing lab. Because like the writing lab, for example, I know a lot of schools, I think we do too, they enter their student ID and they're recorded.
Mm-hmm.
We can track how many, when they attended, how many hours they did, and so forth. Something even notes what they worked on.
That's right.
But
That's right.
their experience in admissions perhaps is never really tracked. But if there was some kind of barcode, which seems very high tech, and I think probably expensive.
Okay, again, barcode, you know, I tend to think that, you know, as much as you may think this is a source of data, undoubtedly it is. Again, it's indirect, that you really don't know what it is they are getting out of the lab, that you only know the frequency, how often they've gone through it. So I agree, it could be an indicator that they are doing research, but it could be an indicator of complete confusion just as much, you know, that they just, you know, they kind of
There'd
like,
be
you
an
know,
opportunity to contact them.
that's right. So I think that, you know, again, I'm sure you have a research department, if not on campus, then the district office does. And I suggest that, again, you perhaps contact research department and say, you know, how do we design a good survey for students to assess the area of student services. And they are going to tell you. I mean, they certainly have experience, and, you know, I would be really surprised if they didn't have any ideas about this. And if they don't, then again, you go and you do your own research. You know, go to other schools' websites and find out. Go to Google and type college student satisfaction survey. I'm going to the 15 million documents, I'm sure, that have something to do with the concept. So again, going back to the initial thought that, you know, it is.
Every time I've taken a class, they always give me a survey online. Now I took an online class.
That's right.
I want to know.
That's right.
How was it easy to get in? Is it easy to follow? Can you use the online library? All of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, the word of caution here is that think of students again as not only sources of data but human beings. You know, you don't necessarily want to be serving them a survey every single time you interact with them. So that's a danger. That, you know, that's another thing that, you know, perhaps at the end of the course that's expected. They do evaluate professors. That's you know, perhaps there's a question or two that could be said somewhere there about evaluation of the institution as well. Sort of like embedded here and there, instead of just, you know, hey, you have a barcode, you know, come over here and fill this out every, you know, other day or whatever.
Just talk to them.
There we go. And that's you know, again,
Because you have an indication.
for the department meeting, that's perhaps, you know, okay, as a faculty member in charge of this discipline, I really feel very comfortable talking to students about their experience, and that's what I'm going to do. So one day I'm just going to put them in groups and say, you know, okay, so we have counseling, we have library, we have you know, assessment office or whatever else. There's all kinds of different areas. You know, why don't you write your thoughts in your group about how it is that you feel, and then perhaps pass that paper around so that it becomes a writing exercise, critical thinking. And again, really it is important for students to reflect on what it is that's happening around them. That's very important.
I have personally heard things from students that were shocking to me, and I can't expound on it, but I was concerned about. And because of a teaching style and knowing instructors, I had to caution them about certain things. So,
Well, that's pretty vague.
I'm sorry.
No, I understand.
But it was just by talking to students, you learn so much, and
What if you overhear something you're not supposed to
Then you're not supposed
overhear?
to. You know, well, you
I
know,
would
again,
ask about it if I heard something.
I just sort of channel it anonymously. That's it.
there's always a danger of that, and it does have its pitfalls. But again, how else are you going to find out whether you're successful in terms of services that the institution has to offer? As opposed to, you know, well, come on, we build it. They're coming, right? That's
But not everybody's comfortable with it.
Again, that's why you create a collegial forum, and, you know, I don't feel comfortable talking to students, but I am very proficient at it, okay? Go right ahead and do something else. Go right ahead and talk to them. You can pass the survey around that's going to be anonymous, and you're going to be sealing it in an envelope every time you see it, and you just give it to the department chair, and you're going to have a conversation. As a matter of fact, that's only a good practice because you get data from completely different sources. That's very important. There's the concept of, you know, data triangulation. So that's not a bad idea. Again, you base it on strengths, talk to your department, figure it out, collect it. This is just a summary of structured events. The service area outcomes include structured events that occurred outside of the classroom, complement the academic programs, enhance the overall educational experience. Again, by encouraging involvement, encouraging exploration, exposing students to various cultures, informing students regarding college policies, aiding in the awareness and utilization of college facilities, assisting with developing leadership, decision-making, and related skills. All these things we just talked about, right? And this is, again, it can happen at the course level, in the classroom, across the board, really, regardless of the discipline that the students are pursuing. Okay?
More specific with services. If I'm a service in the service area, where do I start? I don't know anything about assessing. I know everything about my specific service, and perhaps I always strongly consider I'm a great serviceable employee, right? I'm in the service area and I know how to give service, good customer service to the student. But where do I start in terms of assessment?
Right. So again, that's why I think what you could start with, again, what does assessment, what does evaluation, what does reflection geared towards assessment and evaluation of institutional program effectiveness, what do these notions mean to you? And that would be something that, again, I suppose at the smallest level needs to be hashed out at the department level. That's where I would probably start. Once you have those questions identified, then the discussion should focus on the mode or type method of assessment. And that's what you're going to, again, develop as a department. Because if you have students, let's just say there is a fine arts division and you have students who are painting or creating sculptures or dancing or singing, that's not always necessarily an environment that's really conducive into, lengthy survey answering. You're not necessarily going to be requiring students to participate in writing exercises endlessly in the dance class. I suppose you could, but again, it's really up to you to figure out how to do it. Instead, perhaps you are going to have a short survey that's going to be, again, embedded throughout the semester. And perhaps students could respond to some questions, month number 1, month number 2, or week number 3, week number 7, throughout the semester. And all along the way, you can ask them about different services that students have experienced as they have been admitted to the course. If they are first semester students versus those who've been there for the last 3 years, you can ask them those questions. How do you think the library helped you in the dance class? See what they say. See what they say, just like we heard earlier. You may hear things you don't want to hear about, especially from the dance students. But all of a sudden, look how much your perspectives can change once you do find out what it is that students of dance get out from the library. I think that will be a very, very important piece of information for you as an institution.
So we have Kenny. Kenny, you're representing the bookstore? What the
administrative services, bookstore, business office,
okay,
facilities.
Do you have any questions or any comments about this SAO concept?
Yeah, one of the questions that I'm actually curious about is, should the service area assessment, should that be more easier to holistic to where it includes not just students, to where we're surveying?
District?
Yeah, to include faculty also, for example, because there are terms where they might have to go to administrative records, for example, to maybe turn in a grade petition for a student or something. Maybe the service they got wasn't good. I mean, it would be good to know.
Right.
So should it be more, not just focused on students, but should we also focus on
the service that faculty receive?
Yeah, that faculty receive.
Also. Absolutely. I think that's a factor that can lead to something.
Yeah.
Our experience, I think, ever since I've been a faculty member, there's always been remarks about a disconnection, right? Sometimes, or an experience, a faculty experience. Oh, I go and I need to collect ad cards.
Right.
I couldn't, that sort of thing.
Sure.
That's a service, right?
Of course.
So yeah, I think it should encompass faculty experience.
Okay, so that's a very important question because it really has to do with logistics, how we make it all work as a system. And again, you start with the student needs, so you find out, again, as I mentioned, all kinds of surveys with all kinds of different frequencies for all kinds of different reasons administered to students. But again, I'm not saying that you have to, survey them, from here to eternity until, that's not the idea. You can, structure it differently. But once the survey is done and gives you an idea, then you do look at what it is that this data tells the departments about what is the faculty experience as it impacts their ability, their capacity to instruct students. So this is absolutely very, very, very important that you match those two things, because then by the same token, what? Administrators don't have their needs? Of course they do. Of course they do. And then you're going to say, hey, as far as administrators are concerned, this is what needs to happen for the benefit of the students. But again, you look at the specific data that students bring to the table, and only then you make a decision. Again, with my PRT visit, it became very clear that it really should not be the loudest voices, no matter how well articulated, or how, what was the level of conviction behind the opinion. What matters is that you look at the data as it is delivered. And if the quality of the data is questioned, or there is something that's not sticking there, go right ahead, bring it up to the department's attention, and administer the survey again, or whatever it is that you need to do, to make sure that it becomes a meaningful process geared towards improvement of the program and the institution, rather than just, again, somebody's opinion, hey, I've done it, for so many years, therefore I know it.
Any other point of clarification or point of interest specifically to SAOs?
Okay, so that's what it is. Just like in any other area. Again, what's important is that you find out what it is that students need. What is their perception of the area? And again, as the faculty, many of you may rely on computer labs or counseling or the library or whatever else that's out there in the institution structure that students need to be taking advantage of so that they are successful in your class. And you are the ones who need to be bringing it to the departments, to the leaders' attention and say, okay, this is what my students tell me. But again, try not to make it anecdotal so that it doesn't sound like it's,
an indictment.
There we go.
Judgment.
Yes, thank you. That's right. So it doesn't sound like a judgment or hey, I'm just not having a good day today, so don't start with me. I'll tell you how it is. Bring it in a form as again of a specific survey, and you say, okay, at the end of the course, this is what I have done, and this is what my students tell me. There is something in the library that's just not clicking. They really need to have more computer terminals at 6 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. See, that's something that administrators can relate to. Versus, oh yeah, it's so-and-so bringing we heard that before, That's quite different discussion. That's a completely different discussion. So you're absolutely right. It cannot be presented in a form of a, some scary, thing that people can't relate to. It really needs to be data that's going to tell you what it is that students need at a given time and to what end.
I think going back to that comment, I started thinking about it more and more right now. And I'm sorry, it's different from what you're talking about right now, but the faculty experience is going to be very crucial in these SAO assessments, because the talk is always lack of information. When I go to these leadership retreats or other big talks, it's always there's a disconnection or an unawareness. I had no idea there are scholarships out there, right?
That's right.
So if we involve the faculty experience, I think there will be a better connection and more awareness for the faculty to then distribute, not only be connected to the services, but to distribute to the student. And I think it's that lack of connection really sometimes that hurts college institutions. We talk about, well, we're in silos, right? Well, we do have a whole bunch of great interventions. We have the FY program, we have the Cuenta program, we have Black Scholars, we have tutoring service, we have mentorship services. We have everything, so what the heck is going on?
That's right.
Well, it's the lack of connection, it's the lack of communication, it's the silos.
That's right.
So this SAO work is going to be crucial to make those ties, to build better awareness for faculty, to improve the services, to inform the students, and have all this beautiful connection and communication between students, staff, faculty, administration.
For the scholarship recipients, for example, you are going to design some kind of an exit survey. And let's just say one of those questions is going to be, how did you find out about the scholarship that's available to you? And if 85% of the students tell you, my buddy did, then you have something, different going on. If the message gets to the students by the word of mouth, rather than your outreach or counseling or the programs that you just described, then you really need to be looking at structures that are developed to inform students about what it is that the institution offers, rather than their informal ways or informal networking. So that's something that's very important for you to know. Absolutely, I think that's and again, this can be done at any level, in any classroom, in any interaction with students.
I perused the website for faculty, and it's quite interesting. Things I didn't even know existed.
Right.
You know, what forms, okay, what forms? You know, just to look and see what's out there available.
Right, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just taking some notes and getting some thoughts. I see on the agenda it says that you're in charge of the faculty development on SLOs at your college as well. And my question is concerning adjunct faculty. How does your college get adjunct faculty to buy into and be fully invested in the SLO process? Because their involvement is critical. And Lloyd and I have been SLO facilitators, and it's really difficult in the mindset of adjunct faculty when you contact them via phone or email. It's almost analogous, like a root canal for them. Oh, I got to do SLO.
Sure.
You know, and there's this it's like a big stop sign in their head instead of the positive, going forward, what can we do? And I think, you know, given the amount of adjunct faculty that we have here, it's really important, I think, that we turn this around, that we find a way to really connect with them. Because without their being 100% in, it's not going to translate to the student success.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if Lloyd wants to add to that or not.
No, I disagree, yeah.
You disagree?
No, I agree, I agree.
I should be the person to address that since I'm the adjunct faculty.
All right.
I don't know, anybody else adjunct?
We are.
You're adjunct too? God, are we hot? Well, adjunct faculty are indeed running as quickly as they can from SLOs, unless you fell in love with them as I did years ago. So I understand the purpose behind them. But there is a culture, you're very right, it's tragic, but we're gonna remedy that. Louis and I are gonna take care of that, aren't we, Louis?
Of course.
It is going to be an effortful change. We're going to have our meetings on a Friday, as I understand it, and if I am elected to this representative post, hopefully there'll be more communication.
Excuse me, but what I'm talking about is, not to interrupt you, but what I'm talking about is, this is an example, okay? We have a meeting here today. How many people are in attendance? And how many adjunct are in attendance? And we have to find some grassroots way to jumpstart this, I think, to really get this engine going.
That's right.
Because we can have all the meetings that we want, and we can all be invested, but, you know, percentage-wise, it's not going to make a difference unless we get more people involved.
That's right.
It's like voting.
So again, absolutely, that's right. That's why, again, what
So that's why I wanted to know what your college does to, back to my original question.
To make sure.
In terms of adjunct, how do you draw them in and get them, that
So
fire going?
we do what everybody else does, which means that we have our own flex activities throughout the year, and that's where we embed SLO training in those. There are department meetings, and again, there are people within departments who are responsible for adjuncts, and they are you know, pretty much relating the messages that you know, whatever the department says, that's communicating to adjuncts. How effective that is, that's a topic of discussions. This is not something that we just kind of like brush off and say, okay, we are going to make a decision as a department that's going to be applicable from now on, and adjuncts are not involved. That again, let's just say that we try to make an effort to inform the adjuncts. They have representation at Academic Senate, obviously, and you know, everywhere else. So they are visible throughout the campus. And as a matter of fact, you know, a lot of people do take those obligations, professional obligations, seriously. Again, I like to think of SLOs as not a mandate. This is not something that you have to do because you have to do, but again, going from the perspective of look how insufficient grading system is versus SLO assessment. And when you put the discussion, you know, again, direct versus indirect assessment, you know, portfolio versus standardized testing, that's when I see a buy-in. That's when I all of a sudden see that adjuncts specifically are receptive to those ideas, that I can really be better educator as a result of implementing those assessment strategies rather than just issuing a grade and being done with it. That's a course level. What's, again, very important for adjuncts, and this is, full-time faculty just as much, is to see this link between what it is that's happening in the classroom and the effort behind the whole institution. So when it comes to student outcomes assessment, that's another challenge, because adjuncts, more perhaps even than the full-time faculty, rely on those services that they don't normally interact with. So adjuncts have to make sure, or at least again, it's their perception or their assumption that the library is functioning well, right? And adjuncts are not the ones who are going to be checking on the library stuff or coming in there in the evening to see how their students interact with the library stuff or equipment or facility altogether. Adjuncts are not likely to do that. So that's why it is important for the departments to see the connection that, hey, you're not out there alone. You're not left up, with no support. This is something that the whole institution cares about because it adds up to the whole student experience and student perception of the institution as they go through the instructional program, which can last years. So that's why, again, the engagement and the link with the adjuncts is absolutely crucial. So I think that, again, you're not the only college that I know that struggles with faculty participation in staff development activities. I mean,
it's the biggest challenge in any institution, but there's there needs, I don't know if you can take lunch, if you've got to run out, at least take a box, please.
For another program.
Okay, what I was going to say is that to involve the masses, to involve everyone, it's going to require a little bit of everything. And we've done a little bit of everything here, and we're not in the ideal 100% compliance, which I hope we will at some point, but consistent training and orientation for faculty is very helpful. Administrative and the president's buy-in with money investment is required to get people back so that we can incentivize, right? That's a big one. We incentivize faculty some form or another, there will be a bigger buy-in. Showing those fruitful and meaningful results like the e-portfolio versus standardized test grading versus outcomes, skill sets, that also helps. Being aggressive helps as well. So it's a balance of all those things, but I think for me it's being passive sometimes, right? Knowing how to read and knowing when to be passive, incentivizing, or aggressive is what's going to trickle down. But I think from my experience, it's really orienting that makes a really true difference. From my experience as the SLO coordinator, I think I've serviced now about 150, 160 faculty that I've had one-on-ones or through trainings. Right. And maybe only one out of many who have been opposed to the SLO theme have not bought in. Everyone else, after the orientation, is like, okay, I get it. But how do we get the faculty to attend an orientation? Is probably the bigger challenge. The only way to do that is incentivizing or putting pressure through aggressive pressure or passive pressure, having the higher art leaders in the conversation, that sort of thing.
So that's again, this is like my final slide, but this the track that helps you inform the discussions with the reports that you generate. And really, ultimately, in higher education, there's the concept of faculty learning community, and I think Joe alluded something to it in one of the emails that I received from her. I'm not sure if that's something that you're necessarily familiar with, but the idea is for faculty to get together, look at assessment data, and discuss how the programs can be improved.
But that's the hard part, and that's what Anne is referencing right now. There's just this example. that's the case, so how do we get to that?
Right. So what happens here is this is not a regular, what you may call it regular or how we perceive department meetings. This is not the case. It's not a workshop. It's not a, a flex activity. This is an ongoing forum for teachers to sit around and talk about assessment data. So it has to be regularly scheduled, perhaps even at the expense of the department meetings, because for the most part, when you think about it, a lot of information that's discussed during the department meeting, and again, you may have to look at what it is that's happening within the departments more critically, could be communicated via emails. And if you had faculty group instead, again, meeting for the purposes of looking at the assessment data and improving programs, who knows? Maybe your institution would benefit from this more than just sitting again in those department meetings that are focused on all kinds of implied or inferred notions that students are learning. So that's the difference. Again, it will call for some kind of a restructuring. It is not something that I can tell you do one way or the other. But ultimately, you are going to, again, address what it is that students are learning rather than what it is that we think they are learning. That's the difference, and that's the challenge.
Say that again, please.
Absolutely.
Focusing.
Focus on student assessment data. And consider what it is that students are learning rather than what it is that you think they are learning.
Might be interesting to find out what they think they're learning too.
And before you close, Jarek, I just add something about track that and the importance of elaborating everything that you feel, that you see, that you foresee, and documenting it and track that. It's beautifully laid out, very substantial, very well thought out, with very specific things we want to get at. And so whenever you are working on a track that submission, whether it is for SAOs in the future or an SLO or PLO, that we really go deep into the analysis, that we really zoom in into what is happening at the course or at the service level, and that we're documenting all this stuff, and that we're recommending something that leads to some sort of resource request, or that leads to some sort of major call to create a change, right, or to make a difference, and leave it there. Because my whole thing right now is, how do I get to this dialogue piece? Same thing that Anna's bringing up. How do I get all the faculty involved? Is it going to be the same two faculty at the end, just doing the dialogue, doing the assessments, coming to the training? How do we get that? And track that will probably be one of those things that will facilitate and permit to track all the voices. Because everyone has to submit an assessment at some point. That's right. So everyone's going to be able to, we're going to be able to track everyone's voice through there, generate reports, nice sophisticated reports, and use those also as the dialogue centerpiece.
You know, just like with in case of students, you would like to, I think from the beginning, you emphasized more than once, I think, this relevance, that there is a link between what it is that they learn and their real life application. I think the same thing is with faculty. They really need to see the reason why we are doing the SLOs. Why are we meeting today?
Right.
Is it just for me to, to fulfill the flex activity, or am I really going to learn something? Right. That's, in terms of adjuncts, I think that's just of utmost importance, that they really need to see the reason that by attending this workshop, you're going to become a better teacher. You're really going to be serving your students better. And these are the reasons. Once you articulate that well, then it's so much easier to ensure faculty buy-in, to ensure that the participation that you expect. And really, at the end, you will have better outcomes of the discussions that
That's
are
why
taking place.
I wanted to know how to be better with students.
Absolutely.
I have young students, I
That's
want
right.
to know.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Well, Jarek, thank you for starting this
No, of course.
conversation.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming again to West. You're so graceful, and
Sure.
and thank you all for making this a dialogue. This was a nice example of what I envision a dialogue to be.
That's right.
And gave me a little guide of maybe a framework I can develop to say, well, when we have a dialogue, we need a captain, right? Spark questions, answer the questions together,
right. Yes.
then track them, document them, and track them and share them.
Absolutely.
And so this worked for me in many different ways, and I hope that you can take this to another colleague, to a division meeting, and that you consider even perhaps supporting us with the PRT project. So I'll make a call, or you can make a call to me if you're interested in participating with that. And again, thank you. Are there any last minute questions?
What is PRT again?
The Partnership Resource Team.
Oh, yes,
And it's a special
function of the IEPI.
Yeah, and so that is permitting this presentation today. So again, thank you, everyone, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. So, round of applause.